Hey everyone, I hope you're all enjoying the advent of Cyber 2022 so far. I'm Sim Malik, the tasks creator for today. I'm going to be going through day 2 log analysis, Santa's naughty and nice log. So today's task is going to be focused around log analysis and using some really basic Linux commands to start analyzing some data for texts and things like that. So to begin, let's go through the story. Santa's Security Operations Center, SSOC for short, has noticed one of their web servers, santagift.shop, an extremely important website if you ask me, has been hijacked by the Bandit Yeti APT group. ElfMcBlue's task is to analyze the log files captured from the web server to understand what is happening and track down the Bandit Yeti APT group. So, let's cover some of the learning objectives of today's task. In today's task, you will learn what log files are and why they're useful, understand what valuable information log files can contain, understand some common locations these log files can be found at, use some basic Linux commands to start analyzing log files for valuable information, and ultimately help ElfMcBlue track down the Bandit Yeti APT. So I hear you asking, what are log files and why are they useful? Well, log files are basically files that contain these historical records of events and other pieces of data from an application or service. Some common examples of events that you may find in a log file include login attempts or failures, traffic on a network, things like website URLs, files, pages, directories that someone has access on a web server, password changes. So for example, if I was to change my password right now, the actual event of that password being changed would be logged somewhere on my current operating system. Application errors, which are often used in debugging by a software developer. These sort of events for application errors are really useful because it allows the developer to understand exactly what was going on at that time. So, what sort of things caused this unexpected behavior, when an application crashes, what was going on, what was the user doing, and, things like that. And there's many, many more examples of that. So log files are really useful because they have these historical records of events, right? And this is really useful in an investigation because these pieces of evidence can help us answer some questions. So for example, what has happened, right? When has it happened? Where has it happened? Who did it? Were they successful? And what is the result of this action? So I'm going to leave the task contents there for the time being. I'm going to go through the practical element with you, but I really do recommend reading through it at your own pace, learning a little bit about the commands that we're going to do, and just there's some practical examples of like scenarios and things where log files are actually really useful. So I'm going to scroll to the top of today's task, and I'm going to press the green Start Machine button on the top right of the task to start our in-browser machine that we're going to be working on today. So now I'm going to scroll down to the practical element of the task. So in today's task we're going to be using grep, and grep is actually a really useful command because it's quite simple to use, but you can do quite a lot with it. Grep works in pretty much a simple way. You call the command, you give it some options if you wish, and you give it a value, to look for, and then the file. So this is what the written content goes through, finding the files and then using grep for the first time. But I'm actually just going to demonstrate this real quick. So in this example, I have my terminal on Mac. I'm going to show you a list of names. So I have a list of names that is actually really quite long. Now I want to find out if my name, Ben, is in this list, but I don't want to go through every single name myself because there's actually quite a lot in here and that sounds like a lot of effort. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do ls just to double check the files in the directory, so list files using ls, and we can see here names.txt. So the way how grep works is that, again, you call grep, you give it some options if you wish, and those options will change the behavior of grep, which we're going to see in a minute. A value, so Ben, I want to look for Ben, and then the name of the file. Grep works by assuming your current directory. So, for example, if I was just to type names.txt, it's going to use that file in this directory. So let's see this in action, right? So I'm going to do grep, speech marks, Ben, names.txt. Okay, well, we're getting somewhere now because we have, names that have Ben in them, but not necessarily just Ben, right? So we've got like Benny, Bennett, Benny, Benito, Benton, Benedict, things like that. But I don't actually see my name here, right? So let's clear. And what we can do is we can tell grep to only match exactly what we're looking for, right? So we're going to call grep. We're going to use the -w as an option. We're going to enter in speech marks Ben, and then the name of our files again. And so now we can see that there's just that one value, Ben. So it turns out my name is in a list of popular names, which is, I don't know, strokes the ego a little bit. But yeah, so what's really useful here is that you can see we've gone from having, like maybe 15 odd different names that have Ben in them, but not exactly just Ben. So this is quite this is what I mean by about grep. It's really easy to use, but you can do quite a lot of like really cool stuff with it. So I'm going to return to today's task now that our machine has deployed and start going through these questions. So number 1, ensure you're connected to the deployable machine in this task. Well, it's in the right screen of our page. So I'm going to click completed. Now it says use the ls list command to list the files present in the current directory. How many log files are present? Let's type in ls into our terminal here. We can see there's 2 files. So there's sshd.log and webserver.log. So it's just looking for the number of files. We're going to put in 2. Now the third question says, Elf McSkiddy managed to capture the logs generated by the web server. What is the name of this file? Well, there's only 2 files here, and conveniently, Elf McSkiddy has named it webserver.log. So maybe let's give that a go. Great, thank you, Elf McSkiddy, for that. Now, begin investigating the log file from question number 2. I think it should be question number 3, so webserver.log, to answer the following questions. On what day was Santa's naughty and nice list stolen? Okay, well, let's just pause for a moment and let's start looking at what actual sort of data that we have here, because I don't know what's in the log files at the moment. It could just be all bits of like random text or things like that. So I'm going to use Nano just to open up the webserver.log file and see kind of like what we're working with. So we can see here we got an IP address in one like column. The next column we got date and timestamp, which is nice, and then in the third column it looks like the sort of things that they were accessing. So this is obviously from like a web server, right? And this sort of log is generated when you were to visit a website, for example. So if I was to go to tryhackme.com, there would be a web server log with my IP address, the timestamp that I accessed it from and what I was accessing. So for example, the second entry here is from 10.9.12.30 on Friday the 18th of November this year, and they accessed the /assets/css/style sheet. So some CSS styling, that's kind of standard behavior, to render elements on a page correctly. So now we sort of know what we're looking at. This web server does have timestamps logged. So let's start, looking through here. But I don't actually know how big this file is. Let's quickly double check. So it's about 189,000 lines. So I'm not going to go through 180,000 lines just to, find one bit of text. I'm just going to use grep for this, for example. So we can go back to the question, and it says, on what day was Santa's naughty and nice list stolen? Now we can use grep to look for the word Santa. Right, in webserver.log. So grep speech marks Santa webserver.log. Okay, we got some results here, but it's much shorter than the actual file itself, and we can go through this pretty reasonably. So we see here at the top we have 10.10.249.191 accessed the /Santa page, which didn't exist. Yes, 404. But let's look further down here. So we can see here the same IP address accessed /Santa's list.txt. That sounds like that's what we're looking for, because the question asks, on what day was Santa's naughty and nice list stolen? So let's give that a go. Now I know the 18th of November to be a Friday, so I'm going to try that. As we can see, that is correct. And the next question asks, what is the IP address of the attacker? Well, let's have a look. We have in the first column on that list, on that entry, is 10.10.249.191. So let's give that a go. 10.10.249.1. Great. Okay. Next question asks, what is the name of the important list that the attacker stole from Santa? Well, it is Santa's list.txt. So we're going to use that. If I can spell it right. Brilliant. So now we have the second to last question asks, look through the log files for the flag. The format of the flag is THM curly brackets. Okay. So remember, let's use ls again. We have two log files here, right? And if the webserver.log is 189,000 lines, then I don't know how big SSHD log is, but I'm probably not going to look, through it with a fine-tooth comb myself, right? So let's just have a look at what sort of data we got in here. So this looks like some sort of like authentication logs. We can see here invalid users, failed passwords and stuff. So this is obviously from like an authentication service, but that's beside the point. This is quite a big file from what I remember. Okay, only 2,000 lines, but that's still 2,000 too many for me. So let's use an option with grep which is called recursive. And basically what it means is that it will recursively look through all of the files, all the directories from where you call grep from. So for example, rather than just using grep to look through one file at a time, we can use grep to look through all the files that we have in our current directory, right? So I'm going to show you how to use that. So let's clear our screen just to make it a little bit easier. Recall we have ls to show the files. Now I'm going to do grep -r for recursive mode. I'm going to put in, so the question here gives us a kind of like hint to what we're looking for, right? The format of the flag is THM curly brackets. Okay, let's go for like a wild guess and search for THM curly brackets, right? Now, because we're using recursive mode, we have the option of providing a file path or letting grep assume the file path that we are in, right? So I'll show you. If we use pwd print working directory, we can see we're in home alphabet blue. So if I also do grep r thm and didn't provide like a file name or something, because it's recursive mode, it's going to go through all the files in this directory, then grep will just work on the assumption that you want to look through all the files in home alphabet blue. If I wanted to look through another directory that isn't here, I will just provide this, the path to this directory. So I'll just do, path to my new directory, if I can. And then grep search that path instead. So, but for the time being, the files that we want are located in our current directory. So I'm not going to provide a file path, right? RHM, and there we are. So you can see in sshd.log there's thm stolen Santa's list. That looks like the flag to me. So let's try and type it here. thm stolen Santa list. Great. Okay, so that was today's task. If you're interested in log analysis, we recommend the Windows Event Logs room or the Endpoint Security Monitoring module. The links to those are in the last question of the task. But yeah, I'd really recommend just like going through this. Grep is a really useful tool. You can do so much with it. I have some options here that you might want to explore, so like case sensitive matching, a little bit of like regex, things like that. But if you are curious, you can always use the manual pages of grep, which is man grep. So you can kind of start to see like really what you can do with grep, which is quite a lot. So I really recommend you check that out. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of Advent of Cyber, and I'll see you later.